Hi, this is Bob Samuels, founder of TechConnectr. TechConnectr is a marketplace and campaign management platform of best-of-breed account-based marketing lead generation solutions. We've partnered with the Serious Decisions Summit to bring you wisdom from leading account-based marketing thought leaders. To that end, I'm happy to introduce you to Matt Heinz. Matt is one of the greatest B2B marketers I've ever met. He's a terrific speaker and has a fun way to share key tips. Matt, it's a pleasure to speak with you. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Bob. Thanks very much. I'm really excited to be here, and always enjoy catching up with you at these conferences.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. This Serious Decisions event is outstanding. It's always good, and it's just always in my mind, it's the best. It's best in the business.
Well, it's a highlight of the conference season for me, for sure. I think this is my 6th or 7th that I've been to, and just quantity and quality, pound for pound. Like, you just get good content, you get good people. Like, some of the smartest B2B marketers I think in the world are at this conference, and most of them are pretty open about sharing what they're doing, sharing what's working, sharing what's not working. So I get a ton out of this, just that I can take back, not just for our clients, but also for our business as we grow as well.
It's beautiful, and I'm gonna head to London in October for Serious Decisions there too.
Nice, really good.
That's a good one. Yeah. So for those of the people, and I don't know how very many are there, those that don't know you very well, could you give a little bit of background about you and maybe ABM in general?
Yeah. So Matt Heinz, run a company called Heinz Marketing. We're based in Seattle and help companies around North America build more predictable pipelines. We found as many companies have lumpiness in sales pipeline development and inconsistency around sort of campaigns and process and systems that can deliver repeatable, scalable, predictable pipeline. So that's what we help companies do. And as you mentioned, a lot of that, comes especially for companies selling into enterprise, an account-based approach makes a lot of sense. It may not replace other marketing they're doing, but I think to create a more integrated across sales and marketing approach to your most important accounts is almost always a better way to drive business.
Makes sense. And one of the things I'm learning is that there's not really such thing as account-based marketing program. It really should be baked into everything you do, really.
Well, someone asked me once, they said, what's the minimum size company that you would do account-based for? I'm like, well, a company of one. I mean, like, if you think about, you're selling to an individual, people write the checks, but you got to make a business case for that organization. And even if you don't have all the technology, if there's more than one conversation to be had, if there's more than one decision maker, and if there's more than one step to your sales process, I could argue that an account-based approach can work. Now, you got to play the economies of scale game, right? Like, you can't, invite everyone out to a steak dinner, but if you take the technology, the platforms out of it, and just simply say, we're going to have smarter conversations, smarter messages for the right person at the right time in the buying process as members of the buying committee, you're onto something, right? And so you start with a spreadsheet matrix of who your buyers are and what stages they're at, and then you've got message guidelines within those cells of the spreadsheet. Like, that's a basis for having better sales conversations. It's a basis for doing better advertising, and so it just kind of flows from there.
Makes sense. So lots of different aspects of trying to get the ABM right. You got the targeting and the segmentation, you got the messaging and the channels and so forth. And it all starts with planning, I guess. If you don't plan it out well at the beginning, not going to work out so well.
Well, and I think, a lot of people say, well, it starts with, selecting your target accounts, and that's certainly part of it, but I think it goes back further. I mean, it starts with, what are your sales and revenue objectives? Right? And not just sales objectives, but revenue objectives. More and more companies I'm seeing are applying an account-based program to account management, to driving retention, to driving lifetime value. Whoever your champion was of the organization that bought your product or your service 2 years ago is now gone. Do you have consensus amongst the current buying committee to keep using or to continue to buy the product, right? And so I think taking that account-based approach sort of across the entire customer lifecycle makes a lot of sense for a lot of companies.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I keep forgetting, because in the name ABM, account-based marketing, it's really about communicating to your current customers too, and growing them and retaining them and getting them to be stars for you, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that too often we think of the sales processes, and the bottom of the sales process as the end. I mean, it's the beginning of the relationship, right? It's the bottom of the funnel, but middle of the revenue bow tie, so to speak. So, your ability to sort of continue to reinforce value, to continue not necessarily to sell, but just to deliver proactive value to those members of the buying committee, who personas. I mean, Serious Decisions pointed this out yesterday. Their personas of the buyers, once they're customers, change. Their needs change, what they're looking for changes. But if you stay attuned to that, that is a key part of driving lifetime value, and account-based strategies absolutely help with that.
Yeah, makes sense. And you mentioned personas, and each one of them, you have a different approach, I guess. You've got some of the people that are focused on accounting, and some of them on security, and lots of different, I guess, focuses.
Well, there's a difference too between the persona and then sort of the buying journey. Like a persona defines a person kind of in a moment of time. Here's who they are, here's who they care about. Okay, that's fine. But now let's put them in motion. Right? And if we put them in motion, you've got two planes. You've got the vertical plane of who are they associated with, who else has a vested interest in the company to solve a particular problem. Decision makers, influencers, users. So there's people in the organization they interact with. And then there's these stages horizontally of the buying journey. And so if someone is at the challenge the status quo stage, what message are you going to put in front of them that reframes a problem that they did or didn't know that they have? And how is the message to, the CFO going to be different than the message to the CTO that ties into their interests? And so I think that's where the rubber starts to meet the road in terms of executing well. But I think to your earlier point, a lot of companies do a nice job with personas, but personas aren't actionable in an account-based model.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. And one thing that's challenging to me is you can't go out and buy some software to help you write the content for your different personas and the different stages and so forth. You have to do it yourself.
Well, ironically, there are tools that, artificial intelligence that will create content for you, but I don't find that it has a whole lot of humanity to it. I think that copywriting is very much a science, but it's also an art. One of my favorite books on copywriting is called Scientific Advertising. It was written by Claude Hopkins in 1921. And he talks a lot about just writing to your audience. Like, don't write over their heads, like speak their language and use plain English. And I think you look at a lot of our B2B content and it reads as if we're writing to buildings, and you think about the context. Like, you may have written a beautiful 400-word email that if someone read it, they would fall in love with your product and service. But when you send it at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, when your prospect is going from meeting to meeting, stopping in the modern phone booth, which is the bathroom, checking their email, they're not going to read your 400-word email. They're going to delete it, right? And so getting that copy right is not just about the words. It's also about, again, put this in motion. What happens once someone actually engages with it, or will they? You got to think that through.
Interesting. So I imagine that you've seen a few successes along the way and maybe some other challenges and maybe some bad stories. Anything that you can share?
Well, I think there is someone else's account-based program is not going to be your own. Like, every company is different in terms of who your customer is, what industry you're in, the maturity of your industry, the culture you have internally has a big impact on who's doing what and how well that works. But I think you also keep in mind is that there is no perfect ABM program that gets launched and stays the way that it is. I mean, all good sales and marketing, you learn by failing, and you learn by failing fast and then innovating and making it better. And I think that that's a big part of the cultural requirement in doing account-based, is to look across sales and marketing and say, we're going to try this. We're going to find out why it fails. We're going to find out why it's already broken, and we're going to fix it. And so to take egos off the table, to take politics off the table, to take defensiveness off the table, and just do that together is really, really critical.
Beautiful. So learning opportunities.
Yeah.
Failure is good, as long as you can learn from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of companies where there's a culture that is toxic to failure. Like, we worked with a company once that they had a term internally called reputation capital. And the way that was translated is, you did not, as an individual, as an employee, you did not want to be associated with a project that failed. Like, do you think anyone is trying to innovate in a company like that? Do you think anybody is trying new ideas? Or anyone is sort of putting their neck out and sort of saying, like, I've got a different way of thinking about this that might be wrong, but we won't know until we try? That sounds like a really dangerous precedent to set in a company. Now, it's not about the failing, it's about what you do next. Like, if you try something and you fail, what did you learn from that? What will you do differently? How are you better and smarter now to move forward? But I think that especially when you're thinking about like complex buying journeys, you're thinking about integrating sales and marketing in a way that is there isn't a historical precedent, there isn't a cultural precedent for many companies to do that. You will fail, but let it happen, as opposed to just keep talking about it. Just go do it, fail, and get better.
I like it. So what have you found to be the best way to measure success?
With account-based?
Yeah.
Well, I think that there are, depending on your sales cycle length, there are kind of phases of measuring account-based results. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about closing deals. It's about getting more of those target accounts closed. It's increasing conversion rate and velocity of getting those deals closed, increasing efficiency of how well you get them. So I would, in an account-based model, expect those deals to close at a higher rate, to close faster, and to close at a lower overall acquisition cost. That's the end of the process, right? Like early on, I'm looking at engagement levels. I'm looking at how actively our prospects reciprocating the message and approach we're taking. And ideally, you've taken a benchmark from the last, 6, 12 months of executing in that same environment and saying, like, what kind of engagement did we get? What kind of velocity did we get? But early on, I mean, just like the sales process, you're trying to get conversations going.
Yeah, I remember hearing you speak one time about, what you measure. You have to be able to buy a beer with it. How does that?
Yeah, well, I think it's actually one of our VPs. In a meeting once, he said, you can't buy a beer with an MQL. And I wholeheartedly stole it from him. He's given me permission to keep using it. His name is Robert Pease. Robert, if you're listening, it's still yours. I give you full credit and attribution. But no, I mean, even though you can't buy a beer with an MQL, the point is not that MQLs aren't interesting. Like, there was a conference a couple weeks ago where the idea of MQLs as a vanity metric came up. Like, MQLs are a valuable indicator of making progress in your market as long as you have tight definitions of what that MQL means across the organization. Just like, a prospect that's reciprocating interests. They may not be qualified yet, but they're engaged with your content. Can you buy a beer with that? No. But you're not going to have a sales conversation unless you have the attention of the prospect, right? Attention and access are different things. So all those leading indicators are valuable measures. My concern is when people say that is the end of their scorecard, right? When opening click rates is what they're measuring, when lead volume is what they're measuring, when they're going after the marketing of more up into the right chart showing to the board, like that can be counterproductive very, very quickly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about ABM is that it puts sales and marketing on the same page as far as the goals and the objectives.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
ideally.
Well, in B2B we tend to, we have the flavor of the month or flavor of the year, and I think, ABM's had a little more longevity than things like perhaps social selling and others. But I think if there's any legacy impact of ABM, if the term ABM becomes sort of trendy and isn't something we use, I think the two things that I expect will have a legacy impact on organizations. One is the integration between sales and marketing, getting those teams to operate together. No longer splitting the funnel horizontally in the middle, but splitting it vertically, where sales and marketing each have roles at every stage of the buying process. So that's one. And then two is an appreciation for the buying committee. Right? That you don't treat people in the organization in silos, that you actually work to build consensus and velocity inside the organization so that they can make a decision faster. And I think that's that nuance that we have not traditionally paid attention to because we just focus on leads, and leads are individuals. And even Serious Decisions talks about having, qualified accounts, like in demand units, and thinking about it as a buying group and a buying opportunity as opposed to individual leads. So I think, we talk about that not in an ABM context. It has a big impact on ABM, but I think those are a couple things that I hope will continue to benefit and improve marketing organizations.
That makes sense. It's wonderful. So, a few more questions. What do you see as far as if you put your crystal ball hat on? How do you see this ABM progressing in a year, in 5 years, which is an enormous amount of time?
It's going to go fast. I think it's really easy to sort of look at this conference, and we get to see each other a couple times a year at these things, and this is a bubble. Right? I mean, like the tech companies tend to be a little more advanced. Companies here are pre-selecting because they're more advanced. We do a lot of work with companies in pharmaceuticals and in agriculture and manufacturing. I don't use the term ABM there. A, because it's foreign, and B, it just gets in the way, right? But if you can get sales and marketing to agree to own revenue, have revenue responsibility together, if they can agree to a common set of plays that integrate across sales and marketing activity at different stages, they're doing ABM, they're just not calling it that way. So I think that's what we're going to see. Again, let's talk about sort of the legacy of the ABM movement is going to be a tighter integration between sales and marketing, and a marketing organization in more and more traditional industries that embraces revenue responsibility. That still measures audience, that still measures lead production, but is evaluated and in many cases compensated based on the revenue impact of their efforts.
Makes sense. So what are some of the technologies you're seeing or you would like to see growing in the next few years?
I'm excited to see what's happening with sort of predictive analytics and intent data. We've had this category for the last several years. I think we're finally getting to a point where some of the tools are actually doing what they say they're going to do. And so, sorting through the prospects to find those that are most interested and the most likely to receive your message is hugely valuable. To be able to say, like, I've got 100 people I could sell to. Who are the 8 that would be interested in my message this week, and why? Like, that's really useful. The campaign orchestration and the marketing orchestration tools I really like a lot as well. We've done research that shows that no matter how many channels you're using in your marketing, if those channels aren't integrated with an integrated message and approach, you're not going to have the results you otherwise could have. So tools like Integrate and Lean Data that are providing campaign orchestration, but also tying the data together in a more meaningful way, so you can see across sales, across marketing, across product, across customer service, to know what's going on and make better decisions based on that. I think that category, I believe, will continue to grow. It's entirely possible that some version of a revenue operations platform becomes the next table stakes for B2B marketers, the way that marketing automation has, the way that reporting tools have.
So is something like Engagio, is that in that same ilk, or is that a little bit of a different solution?
Oh, I think Engagio is interesting to me because it's it's clearly one of the leading ABM platforms today. It continues to evolve like they all do. But I mean, I may be going out on a limb saying this. Like, I could argue that the next big leap in innovation in marketing automation is to orient around the account, not the lead. And most of the marketing automation platforms today, it's about the lead. And so Engagio is the first to really say, no, it's about the opportunity, or it's about the account. So, if Engagio all of a sudden had email send capabilities, all of a sudden you have a better mousetrap, I think. So, Engagio's, clearly playing in the ABM space, but I think they have a broader opportunity based on what they're building.
It's nice to hear. I'll be talking to John later. Yeah. Excellent. So this is wonderful. Any other words of advice or that you can share before we sign off?
I mean, I guess the main thing I'd say is just, if you're in B2B, whether you're in sales and marketing, just, continue to be curious, continue to be humble. We talked about failing, but also just be a lifelong learner. Like, and whether you like to watch videos or you like podcasts like this, or whether you're a reader, just make it a regular habit. Because I mean, no matter how long you've been doing this, no matter how good you are at doing it, other people are better than you. Other people are doing things you're not doing, and the more of those things you expose yourself to, even if you don't get a direct lesson from it, you never know what that's going to unlock in your life and in your work. So just, keep learning, stay humble, do good work.
Wonderful. Matt, it's a pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Till next time.